This workshop is organized by NG-IoT European Research Project. It's supported, co-organized with Alliance for Innovation for Internet of Things Innovation, so AIoTI. The IoT Forum is also supporting it. And the main purpose of this workshop is to share knowledge, to explore ways to support and strengthen standardization in the IoT edge computing and cloud computing domain, but particularly to address this transition from the cloud to the edge, where we will have more and more data processing at the edge versus centralized data processing in the cloud. And this context with fast moving and fast growing Internet of Things landscape with expected over 100 billion connected devices in the years to come, we have to address issues such as scalability, but implicitly or correlated to scalability, interoperability, because we have different platforms, different technologies, different solutions, and these solutions need to become interoperable and to communicate with each other through different means, different mechanisms. That also raises the questions, and we have a very good expert in this domain of potential standardization also in areas such as digital twins, which may be also a way to overcome some fragmentations, but also addressing issues and questions related to how can the research community contribute to this effort? What can be the interaction between SDOs, research community? Why can it converge? Why can we create synergies or convergence? There will be also questions related to how to leverage on this diversity of standardization process. We have different SDOs working on different pieces, elements of the IoT edge computing landscape. And then that requires us to see how to foster convergence, how to foster interoperability among standards themselves, or complementarity among standards, how to support it. So it's my great pleasure today to welcome you all and to welcome an exceptional, outstanding panel of experts to discuss this topic and to explore ways to move forward together and to collaborate and to foster synergies. Let me share my screen, my slides, to give you a short introduction on the structure of the session and some key elements. Let me share. Let's see if it works. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Yes.
Works well.
Wonderful. So, some preliminary information. First of all, this session is recorded, will be recorded. So it will enable some of your colleagues to also watch and access the session through the NG-IoT channels and NG-IoT website. You have the possibility to post questions in the Zoom chat. And you can also share your thoughts about the workshop on Twitter and with the different tags which are mentioned. We will have 3 sessions. So today we start by a general session on IoT and edge computing standardization challenges. And the idea is really to take a high-level view to explore what are the main challenges, what is moving, what is emerging in this domain, what are the research, technical, and interoperability challenges that we will need to address. Then tomorrow we will have 2 sessions to continue this journey. One session on European research and standardization in edge computing for industrial IoT, telecommunication, and automotive domains. So we will focus on a specific, I would say, B2B set of verticals. And tomorrow afternoon, we'll continue the discussion, but addressing more the B2C aspect of standardization with European research and standardization in edge computing for home, living, energy, and mobility. So addressing also probably issues such as ensuring data protection by design, compliant privacy by design, cybersecurity. So we may address different topics that are correlated to this evolution of the network architecture and the network reality. The first session will start now with a series of presentations. So allow me to, first of all, present some introductory remarks. I don't know if Martin has joined us already. but we have already Antonio Kung with us. So Antonio Kung is the CEO, one of the founder and the CEO of Trialog. He has been very active, and he is very active in ISO standardization, as well as in Iot. So we'll bear both hats as experts in standardization and Iot representatives. So we'll take part in the moderation and the follow-up of the session. So Antonio, would you like to say a few words of introduction from your side?
Hey, so I hope you hear me. Hello, everyone. And it's not my turn, right? I'm not showing my slide, right?
No, it's just
okay.
for the
So,
preliminary
I am
remarks
the CEO
on behalf of
of I'm the CEO of Trialog. We work on IoT, formerly called embedded systems, and we have this vision. And I've been involved in many standardization committees, only because we are in a world where we have complex system integration, and this is my duty to work there. And for instance, I will be chairing a workshop on the digital twin under my boss, François Poirier, who is on board here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Antonio. And I don't know if Martin has joined us. Is Martin with us?
Yes. Do you hear me?
Wonderful, very welcome, Martin. So it's my pleasure to give the floor to Martin Brinskoff, who is not only the coordinator of Iot, but he is chair of the Open and Agile Smart City Alliance, associate professor at Aarhus University, and a strong expertise in particular with smart cities and innovative design and technology. So Martin, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Sebastian, and also thank you for organizing this. Yes, I have the pleasure of working with Sebastian and many of the colleagues here to see what are the next steps, not just in standardization, but on the research side, the innovation side, and even on the deployment side. Because as you say, Sebastian, it would be so nice if the different initiatives, well, the standardization organizations, the WTO track, and all the more specific ones could work together in order to address some of the common challenges. Because unfortunately, what we are seeing is that everybody would like to do the same thing, and then we just end up with more standards and less convergence. So it's extremely helpful what you do here. If I may just add one wish for what could happen, not just in the discussion here, but then also in the work that's ongoing in all these fora. It would be great if we could agree on a set of simple, common technical foundations that doesn't have to be owned by one SDO track or one community, but really cuts across. So I'm really looking forward to, as you emphasize here, Sebastian, the convergence, so that we don't always talk about the grand design and everything and think that everyone has to be tackled in a silo. So security, apart from privacy and so on. So I'm really looking forward and hoping to see that the different fora can also bend towards each other and agree on some common ground that is shared. So thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. And I think that's definitely a key topic to be discussed today and tomorrow, is to see how we can foster convergence, synergies, complementarities, collaborations among SDOs to support a global digital single market, a European one from the European perspective, but globally speaking, to support born global technologies for the Internet of Things, if you don't want to end up in silos and fragmentation. So that's a very, very important remark. I thank you very much, Martin. Allow me now to give the floor to Svetoslav, who will give the perspective of the European Commission. As you know, the European Commission is investing massively to support research and innovation in the ICT, in the digital domain, trying to ensure that...
Kurze Frage, verstehst du mich, ja?
I beg your pardon, there is someone...
Es gibt auch bei dem Teams und für das Zoom...
Valentin, I let you switch off the mic.
Ja, also ich habe ein bisschen den Hintergrundeffekt.
Okay, so we have the pleasure to have with us Svetoslav from the Mihailov from the European Commission. And as you know, the European Commission is investing massively to support new technologies, that can benefit the society, the industry, the economy, supporting us so many projects for international collaboration. So Svetoslav, it's my pleasure to give you the floor and to share with us your perspective on the European rolling plan for ICT standardization and how the European Commission foresee the role of standards in its own policy and strategy. So Svetoslav, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Sebastian. Do you see my screen now? Or?
Not yet. We see you, but not the screen yet.
Just because I shared, but let me try again. Now it should be better. Is it visible now?
It is.
Yes. I'm not going to go into the presentation more because otherwise something's getting confused. So thanks, Sebastian. Yes, you kind of presented me. So Svetoslav Mihailov from the Internet of Things unit in DigiConnect of the European Commission, dealing among other things with standardization, and has been doing it for years from different units that I've been in. And I just want to mention, yes, on one side, the European Rolling Plan for ICT standardization, but also some kind of background from where we are coming in the area and some of our vision. Although the area is so big that it will hardly cover all the topics that are concerned. So because there is not much time, let's advance. So just to say that the new Commission has this vision of going for technological leadership of Europe, strategic autonomy, technological sovereignty, etc., which is covered by, supported by the DGs that are dealing with this standardization that will go into the rolling plan, etc. So DG Grow and DG Connect, all the important new upcoming technologies, not only Internet of Things and Edge, but also more 5G standards, blockchain, AI, and so on and so on. There is the financial support that was mentioned to the Commission, and this is not an exclusive list, but all the different programs that we have: Horizon Europe for research, then Digital Europe program for deployment, Connected Europe facility for infrastructure. Then we have some other investments that we are stimulating and provided, such as the European Recovery Fund, Next Generation EU, and so on and so on. This is not exclusive, but just to say that we are thinking and working on this. If we look into the European data strategy, so something that DG Connect and the whole European Commission delivered, which was meant to kind of deliver a more strategic approach to enabling stakeholders to gather, store, pool, analyze, and store, etc. information securely, data. It has different activities mentioned inside, but some of the things that are concerned here in a workshop on IoT and Edge were on one side the cloud actions. So we have a cloud rulebook, there are co-investment in cloud edge services, cloud federation, and marketplaces. And then on the other side are data actions, so new legislation, the Data Governance Act, the Data Act, the co-investment in EU data spaces. What concrete actions have been taken? There is the IPCI on the cloud, which is an important project of common European interest, and there is the European License for Industrial Data Edge and Cloud. On the other side, there is the Digital Europe program, in which we are developing the European common data spaces in a number of areas mentioned in the strategy. We're doing it on stages. So some of them are developed in this work program, some will be developed in the next one. And we are not doing this in a vacuum. So we are working with the other stakeholders. Notably here, the one shown is GAIA-X, which has similar goals, but it's an bottom-up initiative of different member states, mainly the biggest one. And it's also working towards federation interoperability of standards, use cases, technical architectures, reference architectures, etc., etc. Then if we just look at within the Internet of Things, when we're talking about standards interoperability, we're looking at interoperability framework, which, as you well know, it's reference architecture, open platforms, APIs, ontologies, semantics. There are different developments that are pushing us, such as decentralization's move to the edge, like 80-20, 20-80, you know, the switch, the computing continuum, edge cloud, the data spaces that we are developing, where with the different initiatives that we have, we're looking at use cases, and not only we, but the other stakeholders as well. The sectors that we're looking at, most of them, but mainly energy, transport, agriculture, health, manufacturers, and so on. Cross-sector cases in communities, homes, etc. There are a lot of stakeholders that are involved, and you'll see there the list. When we're upscaling, we're taking all these things that I mentioned in the framework. Then we are testing in labs. We're doing large-scale experimentation, pilots, etc. There, we are standardizing it, etc., etc. We are doing ecosystems and so on. Then what we are promoting, this Martin already touched upon, are the minimum interoperability mechanisms, or the minimum valuable products, two different ways of saying it, which are promoting minimal but sufficient capabilities to achieve good enough interoperability of data system and services. One example was the Synchronicity project, which developed the memes for the smart city. And they tested this, piloted it in 21 cities, 50 services on a large scale. Most of the services, or all of them, tested in at least 2 cities, etc. So it was a large scale, it proved successful, and it was a cross sector. And then the idea is to have it easy, simple, quick, and cheap to implement, easy to test for compliance, based on existing standards, not inventing new ones, such as, you know, NGSL, the SARF for cities and other areas. There were other initiatives, such as the pivotal point of interoperability, which gave also the idea of this minimum interoperability points. This was developed together with the US. And then it's meant to develop a viable market, cutting costs, minimizing risks, and preventing vendor lock-ins. Within the OpenAI project, we have also developed, the project itself developed design principles for data spaces, which again included architecture, high-level architecture, data space, design principles, building blocks, in this case 9. Sector-specific data spaces will look 10, like manufacturing, health, energy, and agriculture. Governance and business models, the roadmap for creating the soft infrastructure, and then the ecosystem for these data spaces, because they will not be able to proliferate without this ecosystem. Then to describe just how the Commission is structuring its approach to standardization. So we have the annual Union work program, which is more political, identifies strategic priority, mandates to be launched, etc. Whereas then the rolling plan is becoming more detailed. It is more technical, more detailed. It's giving more concrete actions. It provides an overview of the different needs that we have in standardization activities. It provides ongoing activities, yes, which bodies are doing what. It covers technologies of horizontal importance, so to achieve higher impact. It's drafted not by the Commission itself only, but also with the help and together with the multi-stakeholder platform, which is 70 members plus these services. It's about the medium term. It's specific to ICT, which is clear from its name. And for ICT, the Commission only funds standard activities in the rolling plan, and it's updated annually. The multi-stakeholder platform, just to present, it's really multi-stakeholder. You'll see that the member states presenting the different standardization body, and it's a very comprehensive list of these SDOs. And then we have industry, SMEs, and other society representatives. Some logos are given there. And it's also showing some of the activities that is helping with, such as writing the rolling plan, possible ICT standardization mandates, and so on and so on, cooperation, etc. The rolling plan content, it has a lot of areas. You'll see Internet of Things, you see here. You have all the AI and so on, cybersecurity. There is a smart grid, smart cities, etc. So all these different areas are covered. I just want to mention quickly some of the areas, and because I'm writing these chapters at the moment together with our unit. And these are within the key enablers and security. So there are 4 thematic areas. If you look at the first one, key enablers and security, that is the cloud edge computing and the Internet of Things chapters that we're working on. And then in the last one, after societal challenges, innovation in this for the single market, and sustainable growth, the smart grids and smart metering. The whole rolling plan can be found at this link. If you look at the Internet of Things, we have been using the large-scale powers as a vehicle towards standardization. We're looking at standards and reference models. We're partnering with a lot of organizations. You see them, some of them you see there. There were way more than this. We're looking at semantic interoperability, security, privacy, 5G IT interactions, etc., etc. Now, if you look at the actions, concrete actions, there's about standards gap analysis, extending and maintaining ontologies such as SAREF, standards for compliance, cybersecurity, reference architectures. We're considering all the verticals within IoT and smart cities, standardization for data spaces, standardization for emerging edge paradigm. In the area of cloud and edge, we're working towards increasing the share of European players, adoption of the cloud edge in the enterprises, easy switching between providers, deploying the next generation EU cloud infrastructure, deploying EU cloud marketplaces to promote open source solutions, to ensure data protection, security, and privacy, and to make all this infrastructure and cloud and edge climate neutral and very energy efficient by 2030. The actions that are underway is to identify the needs and promote the use of standards for interoperability, data protection, and portability, to embrace and promote open source, to promote standards for SLAs and code of conduct, reference architecture and building blocks. So you see this repeating pattern over and over again, and then privacy and security. And in the edge area, quite similar otherwise as approach. Again, we're working with stakeholders such as the Smart Grids Task Force, and like let's see different groups within it. Of course, it's impacted by decarbonization, decentralization, and digitalization. And there is some specific work in the action, such as the network codes on demand response, etc., the cybersecurity, the energy sector strategy to reinforce the implementation of the NIS directive. So all this about security. And then, of course, here again, SAREF and SAREF 4NR, and the cooperation within for this with the large-scale pilot interconnect. We urge the SDOs to foster cooperation and to work together towards one goal, which is also the case, of course, for the other areas. And the SDO should contribute to the common European energy data space, one of the data space that we mentioned, and the minimum interoperability mechanisms in the energy area. So I think this was, okay, this is the last slide that I edited last moment. So within this workshop, because we also want to define our strategy with your help. So there's a number of questions that we would like to see answered by this workshop and in general by our work on standards in this area. So I've listed some of them, but of course the list is longer. Say, what are the 3 biggest challenges in IoT standardization? Could be more, could be less. What are the, say, 3 most important standardization activities ongoing by collaboration of European actors, etc.? Which are the standardization activities, which standardization or 3 standardization activities should the Commission spearhead and stimulate cooperation on EU level to make the difference? What are the most important SDOs and stakeholders? I think we're pretty much clear about this, but let's hear also the answer. Which are the standardization activities which should be covered in the EU-US discussions? So these are some of the questions that we would like to see answered. And thank you for listening. Thanks.
Okay, sorry, I was muted. Thank you very much, Svetoslav. I think it gives us a very good and comprehensive vision on the strategy that is developed by the European Commission and how to engage with the different stakeholders to develop a meaningful strategy. Allow me now to give the floor to Monique Calisti, who is the CEO of Martel Innovate. She is also actively engaged, of course, in the Iot research project and in the EU Iot CSA. So directly working with different constituencies and stakeholders to support the standardization efforts. Monique, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you see me?
We can.
Okay, great. share the screen. So here we go. You should now see my screen.
We do.
Okay, great. So good afternoon, everyone. I hope it's a little bit slow in reacting my screen, so I was wondering whether you can see it already in the presenter mode or not.
Now, yes.
In the presenter mode, right?
Yes, it's in the presenter mode.
Okay, great. So I'm, as Sebastian anticipated, I'm the coordinator of the EU Iot Project. That is a coordination and support action that is helping to strengthen the European research and innovation ecosystem for next generation IoT and edge computing. Actually, the coordination and support action gathers 5 partners, among which Martel, Intrasoft, Aarhus University, BlueSpec's, and Fortis. What this CSA is doing is trying, first of all, to develop synergies and foster strategic coordination across a number of European IoT/edge computing initiatives, and help growing an ecosystem that gathers different kind of players and help facilitating and fostering synergies among them. What we do also is to help identifying the best practices and success cases to develop business models for a number of applications where IoT edge computing solutions are used, and also helping identify what are the skills that are missing or that need to be strengthened. Also, we have a set of activities that are so-called outreach and impact creation, among which we have a set of targeted activities to open source, pre-normative, and standardization actions. Actually, within this event in the next couple of days, you will hear in more details the kind of activities we are doing in these respects within the scope of EU IoT by coordinating a number of activities across ongoing IoT projects. So the idea is really that in order to achieve impact also at the level of open source and standardization, there is the need to harmonize across a quite fragmented landscape in Europe. And one of the ideas is that we need to help better matchmaking the demand with the supply in order to speed up time to market for different solutions. And in this race, in this process, one of the main challenges for Europe is to ensure that also small business players, SMEs, startups, can actually engage and adopt solutions for either speeding up their service offering or for offering their own IoT innovations. Now, you've heard already that there is a convergence of technology. So clearly also at the standardization level, this brings along a number of challenges, which are due to the fact that even the IoT edge space is not an isolated bubble, of course. There's a number of technologies that are converging at the edge, including IoT, 5G, beyond 5G, edge cloud, hybrid cloud, AI, and you name it. And of course, in this convergence, of course, there's also the need to harmonize efforts that are done across the community by different, actually, research and innovation groups. Now, this kind of work, the harmonization of efforts, is of course complex, not only because intrinsically the ecosystem in which we're moving, it's decentralized and quite diverse, but it's also due to a number of complicating factors that have emerged in the last couple of years, of course. The first one is the fact that the COVID crisis has, of course, disrupted a number of settings, a number of scenarios. including a lot of socioeconomic and technological plans we had, but also due to the fact that there is now in this transition from Horizon 2020 to Horizon Europe the need to align at the EU policy level with a number of very important initiatives. So also standardization and open source initiatives are in a way called to align or called to embrace a broader ambition. That is the one of meeting a digital decade, of realizing a digital decade for Europe. Now, in the ecosystem in which we are actually moving, there's a number of projects that is increasing. First of all, there are a number of funded projects from the European Commission, and a number of those projects will offer actually cascade funding for a third party to join and participate. In this respect, also efforts at the standardization level will be enriched through a growing community of developers. Also, in terms of, let's say, forces and initiatives that are of relevance besides the EC projects, there are a number of, let's say, communities. And this includes the Iot, the Artemisia, the BDVA-IRO partnership, GaiaX, also national initiatives, public-private partnerships like the 5G PPP, led by the 5GIA, the Smart Networks and Services Joint Undertaking, and also at the level of open source, and there's communities like Eclipse, Power, Etsy that are, of course, playing an important role. So clearly, in this rather articulated scenario, to work to create a big picture of what's going on is one of our first ambitions. And also with respect to standardization and open source, what the EU Iot is doing is also to create a mapping of the activities that are taking place within the ecosystem, and also a number of initiatives that are of relevance to this ecosystem. Because ultimately, what we believe is necessary is to connect the dots and foster synergies, but also be able to boost the industrial competitiveness and sustain the economic recovery and growth of Europe. This goes along with the big challenge, the challenge of making sure that this digital transition is also sustainable. It's a green transition. So there are a number of emerging aspects to be considered in the broader perspective. And all this with the ultimate goal to ensure that Europe can basically master its own technology transformation. Now, to get there, it takes a lot of work. That, and some of these efforts are the ones that will be presented today and tomorrow. And I think what we're trying to do within the EU Iot level and this project, and this you will hear also in more details thanks to the dedicated presentation about standardization and open source, is that we're trying to leverage on a number of initiatives that are based on success stories and best practices. Because, of course, while there is a de jure standardization evolution ongoing, there's also a number of de facto scenarios that are pushing into the standardization bodies. Now, clearly, it's a chicken and egg sort of situation, in the sense that without standards, it's difficult to have to ensure industrial exploitation. It's difficult to ensure interoperability of solutions, but it's also true that without a certain level of validation and experimentation on the field, it's very difficult to feed back into standardization efforts. So in this process, clearly there must be significant investments to be done, both at the private and public side. Within our project, what we're trying to do is to provide strategic guidance on efforts that are of relevance to the whole community, And we're trying to gather input from different bodies. One is a group of experts that we are consulting, depending on the topics. We have different group of experts. We have the coordination board that is gathering all representatives from ongoing IoT projects. And then we have an advisory board that is helping in this process. What I would like to recommend is, among other source of information, to actually look very much into the outcomes of the April Next Generation IoT and Edge Computing Strategy Forum. We touched several aspects that are of relevance to the discussions you will have in these next 2 days, and you can find it online. Now, I think I have 10 minutes, right, Sebastian?
Yes, go ahead. We don't have much time, but please
okay.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to, a couple of minutes, because I think it might be of relevance to the audience. I wanted to anticipate the NG-IoT open calls, because there is, as I anticipated before, a number of research and innovation projects that are ongoing now, are opening up cascade funding calls for joining initiatives, ongoing projects already, and participate in research and innovation efforts across a number of domains. The idea is really to engage throughout these ongoing projects, and the focus of the upcoming calls, which you can find in the ngiot.eu portal, is diverse. So depending on the project, you will find different kind of technology areas that are covered. And the first ones will open up now in September from Untitled IoT, and then you see the timeline. There will be several others opening up. So it's very important that you stay tuned to the ngiot.eu channels if you want to have more details. Now, also preliminary information about our findings, including some anticipation on standardization effort, can be found on a report that we have published online, the Towards a Vibrant EU IoT Ecosystem. So I encourage you to download this deliverable, and possibly to send feedback always via the ngiot.eu channels. I will skip this because we don't have time. I wanted just to anticipate the fact that we will organize some other events next week. We will have another event among the ongoing IoT projects. So there will be a number of happenings from now to Christmas. But in the meantime, what I wanted also to anticipate is that we will also organize the European IoT Strategy Forum 2022, and that we will engage a number of projects, and we will look for speakers, we will look for experts to also participate to this event. So I invite you to stay tuned on our channel, and I wish you all a productive rest of this meeting. I see that my camera somehow has become black, but
Thank you very much, Monique, for this large overview of EU IoT strategy and process and the opportunities provided by the CSC. Allow me now to give the floor to Antonio Kung. So we have started with a high-level vision. Now we will really dive into the specific challenges related to IoT Edge Cloud, and particularly IoT Edge standardization. Antonio has been very active in AIoTI as trialogue representative. And also directly engaged as lead or editor of different ISO standards. So Antonio, it's a great pleasure to give you the floor and to share your vision on this important topic. Antonio, we see your slides, but we don't hear you.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. Okay, sorry. So I was saying that So I hope you hear me now. That Monique mentioned in his presentation in nearly every single slide, a vibrant EU IoT ecosystem. And actually the challenge is the ecosystem. Okay, I will show you that. Okay. So first of all, a word on myself. I'm working in many areas in standardization, and actually I can mention IoT digital twins, here SC41 IoT digital twins. And why am I doing that? Okay, and the answer is because we have complex ecosystems. Okay, and one example is the ecosystem for for privacy. Okay, so here is a smart city, and you have many stakeholders involved. They must work together so that overall, in the smart city, you have something that is compliant with privacy. Okay, multiple stakeholders. So the problem is coordination and governance. It's an ecosystem issue. I take another view, which is actually the same smart city point, but from a security viewpoint. Okay, you have again many municipality stakeholders. You have many operators. They work on security. You have even incident management people who are working together, because if you have an incident, you have to work together. Okay, so again, you have multiple stakeholders. Again, the problem is coordination and governance. Now, another example is data spaces such as GaiaX. So this is the architecture of GaiaX. But we all know that the ecosystem is complex. There are multiple stakeholders. And again, the coordination and the governance is the issue. Okay. So my message is actually we need to take ecosystem viewpoint. Okay. And if you look at standardization development and interoperability challenge for IoT and edge computing, there are a few challenges, and always taking the viewpoint ecosystem. What's the governance, and do we make sure that the governance is served well? Okay, so in particular, data sovereignty. What's the ecosystem architecture? For instance, can we combine IoT with digital twins? Because in the future it will happen. Okay? Now we have a problem of life cycle. Okay, because when it comes to AI, you are learning before you are reasoning. Okay. And in digital twin, then you are employing the reasoning stuff, and sometimes you are learning. Okay, so we have a huge life cycle issue, and it's again an ecosystem. Okay, and last but not least, this is ecosystem trustworthiness and assurance, and you have a number of trustworthiness characteristics: security, privacy, safety, ethics, responsibility, sustainability, and resilience, and you need to put them together. Okay. So, and today, if you look at how standardization works, the standards are written for organizations. But in reality, standards need to be written for ecosystems. Okay. And I have to say, that's the view that the Synchronicity and OSC has taken with this minimum interoperability mechanism, because they took the view of the ecosystem. Okay. But just that it's not highlighted enough. So just to conclude, I would not say that, so that's some ads to show that it's important, okay? So when it comes to privacy, IPAN is a community launched by EDPS, and we have a wiki on privacy standards. Then we need to have standardization landscape report, and the EU Observatory, EOS, is working on that. The AI landscape report is published. I think the digital twin report, which I'm chairing, actually will be published this year and published every 6 months, I guess. A blockchain report is underway. Okay. And last but not least, because my boss is here, François Goallier, the IEC Academy is organizing a workshop on digital twins, where we'll invite experts to influence the future digital twin standards. Okay. And so contact me if you are interested to participate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Antonio. I think it was a very good overview, and probably we'll come back later with the discussion of trustability of the ecosystem. I think that's certainly an important topic to be discussed in the second part of this session. Moving from the ecosystem, the collaboration, let's try to now explore what is the opportunity and the impact and the challenges for the society as a whole, including socioeconomic potential. I'm pleased to give the floor to Francisco Molina Castro, who is a researcher at Archimedes Solution, to share with us some perspective, some results of the research of Eu Iot Research Project on this topic. Francisco, you have the floor.
Thanks, Sebastian. Can you guys hear me? Yep.
We can.
Okay, let me just share the screen. I think it's this one. Let's see, is this, should I swap it or which one are you seeing?
We see your slides, that's fine.
With the full screen?
No.
Not exactly, we see, yes, now it's the full screen.
That's better, all right, perfect. So thanks, Sebastian, and yeah, good afternoon, everybody. So yeah, within the NG IoT project, the idea here is to present some or a summary of different findings. So let's kick it up, starting with the bit of the policy context. And we see we have the EU strategy as it was presented a bit before, but now I just wanted to highlight in here that there is the different parts and make it or highlight that the strategy is moving more and more toward digital transformation. So moving and passing from digitalizing things to doing new things. Of course, as it was presented in the first sets of slides. And to point out that the digital compass involves 4 pillars. So that's the government, skills, infrastructures, and business. So within this context, and as part of the NG IoT white paper on IoT and edge computing, related to standardization was the recommendation of building upon and evolve these existing solutions. And this goes into the field of the relationship between open standards and open source. So the idea is to make this stronger. So that was more on the policy side, and part of the recommendations found that were related to this workshop, setting a context not only on the policy but also in the research and the market research and a bit of the business modeling that was done. We can see that the IoT and edge market are both having an important CAGR and will be quite a topic, not only within Europe, but within the APAC, North American, European regions. So we see how the standards have the opportunity or the power to make it a bit easier to have or to get hold of this projected growth within these 3 continents. So also in the edge computing landscape, and who is in here, regardless of the economic opportunity coming in. In this slide, I wanted to reflect 2 important aspects. So that is that here we see a list of main alliances for and organizations. And on the other side, on the market side, we see that the network operators are the ones, the front runners, right? And also, and that is a trend, how the lines are blurring between these different providers. We have providers that come in from the IoT, the device side. We have others that go from the cloud side. And the trend, according to different studies, is that it will probably not definitely go from use cases towards a more platform-centric approach. And of course, it is more clear that the leaders are non-European. So that is quite a challenge over there. Also, to finish up a little bit, that's a series of consultation that was done. We see how the standardization and the use of data are quite and supported or are mentioned by many experts as critical challenges, not only on the economic side, but also on the R&D and I. And in here, we see in yellow in the little boxes on the right side, how standards are a key way to, or part of these challenges. Lastly, we have the strategic positioning. So we see that many experts also see the standardization and the making things more homogeneous as a strategic opportunity that Europe has. So just to finish up, also wanted to point out that standards are in there as part of the recommendations, as we see as it is today, to support large deployment of standard replicable solutions. And also this will help us to increase the harmonization, which is also part of the recommendations from the different studies within this project. So that would be it on my side. Thanks for your attention, and I will give back the floor. Thanks, Sebastian.
Thank you very much, Francisco. Very good summary and outline of the importance of the role of standardization in this domain and its implication for the society as a whole, and for the industry in this post-COVID or COVID still area situation. Now it's my great pleasure to give the floor to Alice Lee, who is the Vice Chair at ETSI of Multi-Access Edge Computing. She will provide a complementary views and really diving into the technical standardization and what are the potential implications. So Alice, you have the floor.
Okay, let me share my screen first. Sorry, I guess, right. I hope you can see it now.
We can, yes.
All right, I just make it bigger to, yeah. Is it better?
That's perfect.
All right, okay. Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Alice Lee, and then I am the Vice Chair of ETSI. Today, I gave you a very brief introduction of IoT related standardization work in ETSI ISG MEC. So the first thing is, yeah, what we do in ETSI MEC, we basically enable edge through standardization. We are the standards people. We produce these standards for ICT enabled systems, applications, and services deployed across all sectors of industries and societies. And then MEC is an industry specification group. We really, we're open to all industries, regardless of ETSI membership. And also we have the focus on the all industries needs. So on this particular part, and I have to say, we also work very closely with vertical industries, especially like consortiums, alliances, for example, 5G-AA, 5G-ACIA, to address their specific needs. And then fundamentally, MEC. MEC is the multi-access edge computing. So this is a part, it's just like, we're looking at the cloud computing at the edge of the network. This network, not only the mobile network, we also look at like Wi-Fi networks and then also fixed access networks. So all in all, ETSI MEC is a combination of standards, industry enablements, and with a focus on the telco edge. So today, since the time is quite limited for me, so I'll just introduce two specific APIs we have worked on. Some of them are still under development in ETSI MEC. The first thing is in V2x Information Service Api. This is a set of APIs we have specified to address the need of automotive industry. For this particular work, we have been working very closely with 5G-AA, also with 3GPP on the related aspects. So the whole API set are really designed to facilitate interoperability for V2x applications to work in a multi-vendor, multi-network, multi-access environment. So the main features have been enabled in this set of APIs include 3GPP related access capabilities. For example, gathering the relevant information for side link means vehicle-to-vehicle communication. This also including vehicle to pedestrian communication. So also disclose such information to other MEC applications. This is a way to really enable MEC applications to communicate in a very secure manner with V2X related 3GPP core network functions, for example, the V2X control function. All in all, we really, through this API specification, we enable the MEC application in different systems to communicate with each other. Another thing I need to emphasize is also we enable this the V2X related applications to consume other MEC services, for example, the Radio Network Information Service APIs, location APIs, Wi-Fi APIs, and also in some cases may also include fixed access network information APIs. So far, we already published the MEC, the group spec of MEC 30. This is about V2X Information Service API. You can find online already. I put the link here for your information. Another interesting API is IoT API. So this is the idea to assist the deployment and usage of IoT devices. The reason for us to introduce such set of APIs is because the nature of IoT devices. So some of the IoT devices, due to various reasons, for example, security constraints or limited capabilities, they cannot, they need additional support to be able to work in a MEC environment. So what we do in this API, we really enabled a set of features for provisioning of IoT devices into the MEC system. And also we provide routing support for communications between the IoT devices and the intended IoT service platform. So on this aspect, very much related to its discovery of the additional IoT service platforms, and also other things like usability and discovery of IoT service platforms, native APIs. So this particular work is still under development. We're planning to publish the group spec MEC 33 sometime by the end of this year or probably early next year. So that's the two IoT related APIs we have been working on. In fact, we do have another ongoing study in ETSI because it's not mature enough. Probably in the future, if I still have an opportunity, I'll bring in more information on this. So I understand because the limit of the time, I can only introduce this much, but do visit the ETSI MEC page where you can find more information. If you have any more information, questions, comments, suggestions, please feel free to contact us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alice, Sheshe, and it was a very good introduction to MEC. I think we will continue. We'll have Darius Sabella joining us for the panel discussion. That will be a good opportunity to deepen and foster the discussion. Very good introduction. Thank you very much. Allow me now to give the floor to Lars Egert, who is the technical director for networking at NetApp, and he's the current chair of the Internet Engineering Task Force, Ietf. And as we all know, there wouldn't be Internet of Things, or we couldn't name it the Internet of Things without the tremendous work developed by Ietf to maintain, support, and enrich the Internet protocol. So Lars Egert, it's a great pleasure to welcome you and to give you the floor.
Thank you, and I hope you can see my slides.
We can, yes.
Right, so thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about what the Ietf is doing in IoT and Edge. And we're doing more in IoT than in Edge, and you will shortly see why. And for those of you who don't know, I guess you all do, right? The Ietf is the internet body, the standards body that maintains the internet protocols, starting with IP to DNS, TCP, TLS, HTTP, what have you, BGP. So basically, all the pieces, all the building blocks that make up the internet are sort of ours, and we keep extending them to make the internet work better. And one specific focus that we have is to make sure that we can connect IoT devices, very constrained, resource-constrained devices, into the internet as directly as we can. And that's sort of the work we've mostly focused on. Thanks for the introductions. I'm the current chair of the Ietf. I took over from Alyssa Cooper in the spring of this year, and my term runs for 2 years. And my day job is to work for NetApp as a TD for networking. And NetApp is a provider of data management solutions for the cloud. Sort of the motivation, this is a little bit controversial quote, but this is an article from 5 years ago from The Guardian. There was an op-ed on somebody saying it. We really need somebody that knows how to build large systems to make sense of this still emerging IoT space, because it's he called it a technological stampede, right? There's too many protocols, there's too many players, there's too many fora. Nobody has an overview really of what's going on, especially if you then include all the verticals that are also looking into it. So we need some simple building blocks that are broadly applicable, that can really support all of these different flavors of IoT and Edge. And the Ietf is trying to deliver some of these protocols, specifically the ones that are sort of core internet, if you will. So another way to look at this, right? We sort of can sort of divide very broadly. We divide devices into like 3 classes, right? And I'm starting on the right-hand side here. So if your device can run a full internet stack, right? We're done, right? If you can run IPv4 or IPv6, ideally v6, if you can run DNS and TCP and TLS and so on, congratulations, you are a full node on the internet, right? And you're not a thing, you are just another host. And you can run our stack, and we keep providing you better protocols here, but we don't consider this IoT. This space, it sort of overlaps with Edge a little bit, but to us, you know, that's just another host on the network. What we try to do is look at devices that have trouble with running a full-blown internet stack. And we try to sort of think what key pieces of internet functionality we need to support on those devices so they can become full-fledged citizen. And a lot of the work we've been doing over the last 10, 15 years falls into that category. So we defined ways in which you can run IPv6 over IoT link layers at very low overheads. We have a very low overhead routing mechanism for ad hoc IoT networks. We have a very low overhead transport protocol that gives you some reliability. We have highly efficient data encoding. So we have building blocks that are simple enough that they compile down into very minimal footprint implementations that can run basically on sensors and other very constrained devices. And on the right-hand side, you have these devices that are so constrained, right? The ones that cost like single-digit cents or something like that, that are so constrained that even with our best efforts, we cannot push the current internet to them. And therefore, these devices are limited by proprietary, often local protocols, and they cannot be nodes on the internet. They require some sort of gateway. But to us, you know, that class is actually, because of the market and Moore's law and so on, getting smaller, right? These days, for 10 cents, you can get a device that can easily run an internet stack, no problem, right? And so there's the internet is actually really able to stretch out into the edge, the far edge, if you will, without a lot of sort of intermediaries and a lot of translation, which is quite powerful. because it means you can run end-to-end protocols or configurations of end-to-end protocols in ways that basically makes IoT look like an internet communication, which is, you know, what we believe the right approach to this space is. I mentioned before, we've done quite a bit of work. I don't want to go through all of it here. I color-coded it for you a little bit. So there's a bunch of work in what we call the internet area, which is an area in the Ietf. A lot of it is related to how do you carry internet packets, IPv6 packets, over these network layers, these link layers that were built for low energy communication and local communication. We have a routing protocol that goes with that. We then have some work to build applications or support applications. Specifically, we focus on RESTful applications, so web style, transactional things on top of that substrate. And then we sort of really focus on security because I think that's one of the key, still a key problem area for IoT. So we're really trying to leverage the existing well-researched and well-analyzed internet security mechanisms like DTLS and others for the Internet of Things. We try to worry about how do you securely do a software update, which is another huge problem space in IoT, right? How can you do attestation? How do you do authentication and authorization if you have a very limited device? So those sort of things are of interest. We recently started to work on operational considerations for IoT deployments, which is an interesting area for us to get in. And then we have the Ietf, which is our research arm, where we have the thing-to-thing research group that basically looks at all kinds of emerging research topics and discusses if any of them are ready to bring over to the standard side. And I think tomorrow there's a talk that goes a little bit more into detail on what the Ietf does. On the right-hand side, you see a little bit of a stack layering protocol that shows you how some of these pieces fit into the internet stack. It's a little bit of a complicated structure if you have like the usual 7-layer model in mind, but it shows you that on the bottom you have the link layers, which are not what the Ietf is working on. So we have some IEEE link layers, Bluetooth Low Energy and others. And above, we have really the Ietf sort of core competences, IPv6, IPv4, transport protocols, co-op as the application layer, and then the applications on top. Since this was about challenges, right? So there's many. I put 4 on this slide that I think are sort of maybe most interesting to discuss here. First one, silos, right? We still, after so many years of IoT deployments, we still see large and small deployments use proprietary protocols and become silos. And verticals compound this. They don't help, right? If you're looking at, you know, in automotive, for example, right, different manufacturers originally wanted to be silos. Now they're talking a little bit amongst themselves to not be silos, but they're still verticals. And what you do in automotive, you know, has very little relationship to what's done in healthcare. And that's a problem, right? And the entrenched cloud edge business model is also not helping, right? The way people think they're going to make money in IoT is that they're going to put stuff on the edge. They're going to get the data somehow to the cloud. They're going to mine it. Profit's going to come out, right? Which is not something that needs to happen that way because, you know, there's processing capability that's available at the edge, and the edge can be, you know, independent or at least a more full-fledged citizen on the internet or the network. But the current model is that you're deploying an edge, you're deploying a cloud, and you are treating it as your chain. Security and privacy, I mentioned before, still huge issues like denial of service resistance. How do you securely bootstrap a deployment? How do you securely bootstrap an upgrade or an extension to a deployment, right? How do you software updates? How do you give the user control and give the user or the operator insight into what's happening in these networks? How do you know that you're under attack, right? Still large issues here. Sustainability, the third one, right? At the moment, specifically for these silos I mentioned before, end of life is controlled by the vendor or the market, right? So we see these cases on the consumer side, you know, if the smart light bulb that you bought, if the manufacturer decides that they're done running the server for you, your light bulb is no longer smart. And it's often not even the light bulb because it won't turn on or off anymore, right? And that's a problem. It's a problem because functionality goes away, but it's also, you know, a problem because if you're thinking of tens of billions of devices, you know, it's not ecologically feasible to, you know, throw everything away and start over just because the vendor decides that they're done running a server, right? So we need some way of evolving these systems that are in deployment without obsolescence just because, you know, that the cloud thing goes away. Ideally, we want to have some way to reuse them for something else, or at least maintain the use that they had before and upcycle them to other uses if possible. And then this is maybe a little bit more Ietf internal, but so the Ietf, as I mentioned, right, we provide the building blocks, and they have broad applicability across many different scenarios and deployments. But you know, the question is, should we as the Ietf get a little bit more involved into actually defining solutions rather than just providing building blocks and letting others define the solutions? One example recently here is Thread, right, which is a nice example of how you take a bunch of Ietf protocols with some other things and you define a solution that people can then take as open source and ship products around, which is great, right? But the question is, should the Ietf more actively get involved, or should standards in general get more active into this space where actually solutions are defined? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lars. I think it was a very good introduction. Probably we'll come back to, I saw a question from Rolf. Maybe if you want already to address it, or maybe we can address it during the panel discussion, but I'll let you read the question in the chat from Rolf. So now let me give the floor to François Coyer, who is joining us from Montreal, from Canada. And he's the international chair of ISO IEC JTC1 SC41. So really working on very important topics which are relevant to our discussion, including IoT standardization, again, through the JTC, involving both ISO and IEC working together on this topic, but also technologies and concepts such as digital twins that may also play an important role. So François, it's a great pleasure to give you the floor.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure for me to be able to present to this workshop. And as mentioned, I am stationed in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and I have the pleasure to be the chair of the joint committee between ISO and IEC on IoT and related technologies. Now, simply a background, as I mentioned, and as what was mentioned by Sebastien, SC Subcommittee 41 is part of the joint committee, the joint technical committee of ISO IEC on the standardization of IT. And its mandate of SC 41 is the standardization of Internet of Things and digital twin. Now, some key points is that, and I'll talk more about that, but first, it was created, SC41 was created as system committee. This is because of the nature of the Internet of Things. As you all know, it's not a technology as such, it's a system concept that use many technologies, many IT technologies. So because of that, we need to work cooperatively with other entities that are standardizing those technology. The other thing is that the Internet of Things is an enabler also of many, I mean, what you may call the smart world, which means that our main customer of our standards is not necessarily the IT community, but more the system engineer that are developing those all those smart systems. So it's very important that we work cooperatively, that we listen to those people that are developing those the standard for those systems. Now, a last thing about when we talk about our work, we are part of ISO and IEC, which are known as de jure organization. The membership is national, but there's our strong liaison, again, process in place, which mean even that the documents that are developed externally can be fast-tracked, be adopted within ISO and IEC. Now, GTC1, I won't pass too much time about that, but it has a series of subcommittees that have been standardizing IT since the late 80s. And we are one of the most recent creation. We're talking about in this workshop about edge computing. So I'll talk about that a bit more, but we've been working with Subcommittee 38, Cloud Computing and Distributed Platform, for developing standard in edge computing. We also work, given that you find many technologies like AI and big data, that we talk about trustworthiness, and one of the important component of trustworthiness is, again, cybersecurity and privacy. So we work with a lot of other committees within GTC1. We coordinating our work or have some joint work with them. So this is the structure of SC41. And what I want to stress there is first our core work. So IoT foundational standard, interoperability. We have an interface with the application world, and now we have a new group that has been created on digital twin. And lately what we did is we regrouped all the work that we did in the underwater sensors network area in a new working group. And we have started talking with, again, organizations that are working in those domains. I mentioned the link, the very important link with the, I would call all the different domains that are using IoT. In general, what we have is liaison group with the industrial sector, including smart manufacturing, and the utility area, including smart city. And we have very specific joint working group that has been created with the smart energy and smart grid area. So we can see a joint working group there with the entities in the power system area, and also with what the IEC has, what they call system committees. And we have one there with the system committee on smart energy. And we have also, because we have to recognize that the industrial IoT is the result of the convergence of what we call IT and OT, the operational technology. And a lot of those standards in OT and the ISO and IEC were all coming from a TC65. So we do have a project with them in a joint group. Now, Antonio talked about the importance of trustworthiness. So we have, again, a group there that's coordinating work with not only SC27, which is covering the security and privacy area, but also there's a working group reporting under GTC1 on trustworthiness. And we must keep in mind that trustworthiness also include a lot of other attributes than security and privacy. One of them that for me is very important is resiliency. And there's a subcommittee of GTC1 that's starting to look at the system engineering aspect of resiliency. Edge computing is not, you use edge computing and distributed, again, a computing architecture in IoT, not only for data processing and having more responsiveness, but also for resiliency in many applications. And then the networking area, network focus, we have a liaison group on communication and networking, interfacing with mandated to interface, it's very with the ITU, but also a system committee on communication and networking in the IEC. And we have a subcommittee on that that's working on networking standard in GTC1 also. Now, I won't go through all the work program of SC41. I've listed there a few noteworthy standard or work in progress. We have a reference architecture that has been published, and now we're quite advanced in the second iteration. Standards in the area of edge computing, there's two that have been published, one from the IoT's perspective and the other one from the, again, from the cloud computing perspective, and this work was done in a cooperative fashion. We have a series of standards, very high level on interoperability for IoT systems, and there's a first three part that have already been published, at least the first version. Looking at, again, because middleware is very important in IoT architecture, So work has started there on, again, standards on data interchange platform for IoT services, and then some lower level standard there, data format, value encoding and development, and more specifically, some work there for in the area of industrial IoT. So I will stop there. I will put my presentation online. It has an annex, which much more detail about the work program and the published standard of SC41. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Francois. I think it was a very good introduction and the important work led by GTC to bring already, and that's something perhaps which could be an inspiration for future work on convergence among SDOs, but the fact that you are already the result of a joint effort between two SDOs historically, which are working together to ensure comprehensive and harmonious standards which are supported by a larger community. Thank you very much. Allow me now to give the floor to Marco Caruggi, who is also very active in Study Group 20 at the ITU. He's one of the main lead in standardization and ITUT, to share his view and his perspective on this evolution towards edge computing from IoT, edge computing, standardization perspective. Marco, you have the floor.
Thank you, Sebastian, and I hope you can see my slides. Do you prefer in the other mode, or I can go with the panorama mode?
That's perfect.
That's perfect. Okay, thank you very much. And good afternoon, good morning to all. So first of all, thanks for the invitation, and I'm honored to be here and representing ITUT. Personally, I'm involved in mainly two study groups, the network study group 13, and the study group 20 on Internet of Things and Smart Cities, where I play roles also of rapporteurs. And here, this is essentially an overview of highlights of some activities that we are doing. It's a wide topic, so there is not here a presentation about structure of ITUT and process of ITUT, is essentially focused on technical aspects, although we may see now more and more in different activities that business models, ecosystem aspect play more and more a role in producing and developing technical specifications. The other things as preliminary information I want to say is that, first of all, SDOs and alliance, consortia, initiatives, collaboration among them is really needed. First of all, because we still have open issues on different aspects, as well as we see the proliferation and fragmentation, if we want, of the market and in the industry, and including initiative in standardization or pre-standardization. So certainly the collaboration is important, and there are certainly many tools in ITUT. We have been active in many cases on roadmaps that we hopefully can share across organization in order to achieve a common vision and target for further developments in terms of standards and more. The other thing is that these challenges that we have in IoT and edge computing as one technology among many others that are integrated now in the IoT and in networks are can be general from a more general technical point of view, and you see in edge computing, it was already mentioned, this computing continuum, the distribution more and more of computing. But also we have issues when we want to apply this technology to different applications in this digital transformation, has been already mentioned, and you have tomorrow different sessions on different application domains. I would say that then I have also a slide about the fact that the different technology that are more integrated, more and more integrated in IoT can benefit also edge computing, for example, AI, support of AI to edge computing. This is the only slide I have about ITU, and this is to mention the different initiatives, in particular Study Group 20, which is the standardization body on IoT and smart city and communities. But in ITU and in collaboration with other organizations also, we have different initiatives which are beyond in IoT or beyond the IoT. As well, we play a role with coordination activities. For example, taking care of a roadmap collection of standard across SDOs, as well as initiative focused on key performance initiatives like EU Iot for SSC. But the edge computing goes well beyond the IoT. And in fact, here I've just, obviously I will not go through them, but I've tried to collect, in fact, now what's the current status of the developments in IoT in terms of edge computing related specification. We have published 2 documents, recommendation in Study 20 on edge computing for IoT. What are the requirements of IoT for support of edge computing? What is specifically requirements, capabilities for a gateway which is enabled in IoT to support of edge computing functionalities. But another key activities in the context of networks, Study 13, well beyond the specific US related document, we have a number of ongoing work items from cloud computing activity moving to the edge, regional clouds, we will see one slide, or fixed mobile convergence with the fixed mobile and satellite convergence now, and the evolution for support and positioning on edge computing functionality in the fixed mobile convergent environment. This is our activity in the network aspect. There are also activities. Most of them are collected and developed under Study Group 16. This is the multimedia study group. You see some document related to specific application, video surveillance, content delivery networks, unmanned aerial vehicles, as well other ones for cloud gaming, ongoing, or vehicular multimedia services. Also, we have the General Security Study Group 17, which is has begun to approach all these ongoing activities, the general guideline for edge computing data security, and also a security framework in the context of more global security frameworks that have been already developed, as well as other specific work. And lastly, but not least, Study Group 5, Environment, Climate Change, and Circular Economy, is looking at some, among others, energy efficiency aspect, and there is an ongoing item on micro data center for edge computing, energy efficiency for them. So few elements. This is in terms of activities on IoT concerning looking at the IoT components that we call components of the IoT. Some documents have looked at IoT network issues, data ecosystem issues, and Antonio clearly mentioned well the point of ecosystem, not only for data, but in general as a general approach to be looked at. And in 4208, we have addressed IoT requirements from a service point of view, according to a deployment perspective of functional requirements, according to the categories of common requirements of the IoT, how they have to be enhanced in order to support technology like edge computing, as well as specific effort on capabilities for gateway, protocol translation, data processing, and beyond. On the next slide, I want just to mention two specifications from the network side. This is an ongoing draft, which is talking about edge cloud. A lot of work has been done in 13, actually, in collaboration with ISO, in the past on cloud computing with some basic recommendations. And here we see the concept of, among others, because I'm sure tomorrow we will see the very granular perspective of this cloud distributed in this continuum. But here we talk about 3 essential core cloud, regional cloud, and edge cloud, with the definition that you see below, small capacity resource enabling cloud services in this cloud computing functionality deployed at the edge. And you see on the right side the fact that we may have different types where, and then it has to be looked at in terms of coordination, functionality, capability. For example, very important for coordinated resource. We may have many edge clouds. They have to be coordinated. Can they coordinate across using their own resources and exchanging across them, or they have to go through regional or core cloud to exchange them? So this is, I would say, I would say, high-level perspective on deployment of clouds and edge clouds. And this is another, just showing scenarios, among other ones, where a multi-edge access company, this is the acronym used is the same one that that's used. We are talking about fixed mobile satellite convergence, more and more important for 5G networks and beyond, well, essentially beyond, but also we begin to see this importance in 5G and some development also in 3GPP. So how the convergent networking can be made at the access for a terrestrial MEC, or using core network or RAN-side satellite access, as well as the two figure below show when MEC can be hosted in a satellite or can be hosted inside a ship. And then we have other scenario where in this sense, we have to take care of coordination, resource, and access to the functionalities. Last one in terms of information is this one is also in the context of MEC. The evolution, this is a draft about a unified, this is called Unified Multi-Asset Edge Computing, based on already developed in 2019 a function architecture for FMC in 5G, and evolving enhanced functionalities based on this architecture for having a unified multi-asset edge computing. So this is type of draft evolving architecture for edge. And without saying more than that, and finally, I want to mention an example of work we are doing in the context of a focus group on autonomous networks. Autonomicity, as we know, is very, very important now. And use cases, a number of use cases have been collected there. There is one where we show that a specific algorithm of artificial intelligence, in this case, genetic algorithm, can analyze, predict services, and deal with the dynamic network topologies, which is very frequent. And today we see, witnessed by telco operator, the network topology is not static and load is not uniform. So there are challenges to host URLC or MMTC services based on this dynamicity. So this type of application of machine learning, AI algorithms can enable to efficiently forecast and migrate the service, basically place the service as appropriate for obtaining the best performance. So just an example of how other technology can enable. So globally, obviously is a wide topic, but I hope as a final message that we will certainly, with these events, able promote collaboration among SDOs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marco. I think very good introduction. Allow me now to give the floor to Johann Friedrich. Johann will present the perspective of IBM. In particular, IBM has been quite active in supporting many innovation, technological innovations, and supporting standardization at European and international level. So Johann, it's a pleasure to give you the floor and to give the, I would say, more industry perspective in this context, and what are the challenges and opportunities.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think you still need to leave sharing the screen.
I think
I have to stop the screen.
Yeah, stop the sharing of the screen on your side.
Exactly.
Right. Sorry, very much. Sorry.
No problem.
Please, Jochen.
And now I should be ready to share this. And I already realized you can hear me, which is very good. Okay, yeah, thank you very much. My name is Jochen Friedrich. I'm head of the Department for Standardization, Technical Regulation of IBM Europe. And amongst several roles I have, I am the chair of the expert panel of the German Standardization Council Industry 4.0. And I have also been leading as a member of the multi-stakeholder platform. I'm the chair of the task force developing the rolling plan, and I have been co-leading some activities on digitizing European industry some years ago that the subgroup of the MSP, the multi-stakeholder platform on ICT standardization did. Okay, now on my presentation today, I thought what makes sense how to approach this topic from my angle. And you see here already, I come very much from the industry 4.0, from the digitization of industry angle. And the challenges we have been talking about for some years, we have made a lot of progress in standardization, but the challenges are still the same. Come to the fully integration level, further evolve the standards that are already in progress, both for vertical integration and maybe even still more challenging for horizontal integration. So for vertical integration, bringing shop floor and office floor together, have all the standards, all the technologies available. And for horizontal integration, have the standards available for reaching across the different organizational boundaries, the value chains across these. Both aspects have already been mentioned several times today, so I can happily build on them. And as I was saying, we do have a lot of standardization going on here. And it's great that we also bring together today all the perspectives. It was fantastic so far to see IEC, TC65, JTC1, SC41, the Ietf with this really foundational work they do on this. Very, very good. And let me now develop a bit further on this, what I see as I can nicely build on this as further challenges. So digitization, that's clear, and this is a bit of a motivation slide here, probably here preaching to the converted, is a clear competitive advantage. It means access to and analysis and use of data, key applications that are available, and vertical and horizontal integration. So what we look at is that real-time visibility into the performance of global manufacturing operations. Right? It is, for instance, real-time visibility into quality and compliance. It is real-time visibility into the status of all processes around the manufacturing data process. It is to identify the need and schedule predictive maintenance of assets. And it is about the ability to integrate manufacturing systems with data. And it is about many more, okay? Just to outline some key tasks here. And for all of this, we see standards are absolutely necessary, but also they get complemented by open source developments, by platforms, as it was already mentioned, technology platforms. There are currently probably the two key ongoing standardization activities here from my perspective, and digital twin was already mentioned in much detail, thanks to this for François. So we do have the asset administration shell and the digital twin as two activities going on. Major standardization work in TC65 and in JTC1 SC41. There is also some what you could call pre-standardization work in the good old terminology, and I didn't find a better word yet. For instance, in DIN specs around the asset administration shell. Now, just a few words, what is the asset administration shell for those who are not aware of this? It's the intelligence layer that comes around the physical asset in order to provide all the information that is needed about the physical asset, and then use this in the upper intelligence, in the IT layers, and make use of this. Use it for the digital twin, for the cyber physical representation of the actual asset, to do whatever you want to do, right? And need to do, to get all the information that were in these various layers I showed before. What we also have going on to these, and digital twin, pretty clear. I mentioned the cyber physical representation of an asset with all the information that you need. What we do have, in addition to these standardization activities, and I could have added more standardization activities, W3C's work on the Web of Things, for instance, is also relevant for both of these areas. But this all gets complemented by open source activities, platforms, implementations, and when I say platforms, it's something like service delivery platforms, protocol management platforms, these kind of things. And amongst all the work going on in open source, it's probably a leading role here with the Eclipse Foundation that was already mentioned also by someone in a previous talk. Now, the next step, the key challenge I see is, of course, to advance the standardization work, right? Get the standards done, get them ready, get them implemented, get them globally agreed. We want to have global standards on this. Also beyond these two topics that I highlight here, involve all the other work, make it work together. Like coming from the basic technology layer with the Ietf, coming from the physical assets up to the highest layers, including also formally recognized standards bodies, and so-called fora and consortia. OASIS is another standards body that has on the application level several technologies of relevance here. Bring this together, and then also bring the open source work together, leverage this as much as possible. We do see a boost in innovation coming from open source around all of these activities, and we must make sure that we do not have parallel worlds here, but that we leverage the innovation on this, bringing them both together, making the two, sometimes two communities, two worlds, even two cultures, communicate as much as possible, create awareness about what's going on, see how open source can support this. That's a key challenge I see. And let me go a bit further into detail here with just some more examples how this interrelates. I know this is a simplification of the world, but I like to show this, and it helps, often helps. So we have on the bottom the physical layer, be it industry, mobility, energy, automotive, whatsoever, right? And here data is generated, and we need to make sure that this data is also tagged in the right way, that we can use it in multiple ways. So we need identifiers, ontologies. In general, the semantics must fit here. We need to classify the data properly. If I go back to the industry example, if you have a machine running that generates data, there's often the question, who does the data belong to? Does it belong to the manufacturer of the machine, to the proprietor? And this discussion, of course, doesn't help, right? Because the machine will generate data that is of relevance to the manufacturer. It will generate data that is of relevance to the proprietor. It will generate data that is of relevance left and right to the supply chain. And here we must make sure, and that's one of the next steps, that we classify this data properly, have secure gateways to direct it into those ways where it has to go, where it belongs to, clarify the ownership, and make sure that it can be used. That's around data governance, security, privacy aspects here for standards, and also already maybe for things like transfer protocols, APIs, things that you typically nowadays design right away in open source, right? More and more the IT world, the typical thing today do is if you have an API, clearly interfaces, design them in open source right away. Also transfer protocols, provide them in open source. That helps that they get easily implemented. That helps to bring the community that uses these together to further elaborate on them. And then we have service delivery platforms. And as we go into the cyber physical systems, digital twin, we need to bring the data into all of these layers, into the cloud, very important, into the hybrid cloud environment, into the edge, make use of it, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, whatever applies here. We have quality assurance, an area for standards. And here again, I see that it's something that, from my perspective, but I'm happy to be told better here, but there is a lack still around quality assurance standards. And of course, you have analytics, AI, all these application layers at the very top. So a challenge here, get the full picture together, and it's fast moving, keep up to speed, but also make sure that it all works together, and that we have the technologies, standards being implemented in open source, providing a level for standards to again operate on top of this, make these two worlds work together well. And moving on, again, even more simplification here, but just to say we have standards, basic technology definitions, rules, metrics, you have open source service delivery platforms, reference implementations, etc. And you have this more merging world where open source becomes the standard, like APIs, protocol, data governance, data management technologies. You see, where we bring them together, we have a huge potential to drive the innovation here. So there is, what is needed is in both communities, the standardizers and the open source communities, to look at each other's, follow each other's. We see that the movement is going on to be aware of the technologies, support each other's, yeah, and make best use of them. And I believe this was my last slide. And with this, thank you very much for your attention, everyone.
Johan, thank you very much. Very good introduction too. So now let me first give the floor to Dario Savella. He's joining us for the panel discussion. And I think Dario has been really leading and pioneering the standardization of multi-access edge computing for many years. He's working now with Intel. And I'd like to ask you, Dario, from your perspective, having heard to the different presentations, how do you see, or why do you see the major challenges from a standardization perspective to enable these different pieces of the puzzle to fit together and to make it globally acceptable by the industry and by the different stakeholders? Dario, what is your view on this?
Hello, everybody. Hi, Sebastian. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Thank you. So indeed, I followed with so much pleasure all the previous interventions from the speakers, and I'm also pleased to be here joining the panel. Actually, I received this question. It was it's timely question. I believe very, very useful for all of us. And maybe let me try to share. I wanted to share a slide if I can, because I can also for the people who is attending this panel can be useful as well to follow better, right? So maybe is something that you can see already.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. I'm sorry, I have multiple screens. I guess you see just one single slide for me. This is quite simple. I just wanted to summarize what is the problem from my perspective. At least I can talk from ETSI-MEC perspective, and but usually this is a similar problem for many stakeholders and many standard bodies. So your problem is how to support global interoperable standards from IoT and edge computing. And the goal is also to avoid the standards fragmentation. And this is really a hot topic for us. I can give you some example on how we try to solve this, in which domains we are engaged as ETSI-MEC. So as I will say a leading standardization body on edge computing, of course, we need to align with the other standard bodies. There is nothing worse than having multiple standards not aligned. That will instead provide fragmentation and confusion to the market. And last but not least, we want to avoid duplication of work. That is simply not useful for anybody. So that's why we are currently in a continuous dialogue with the 3GPP when it comes to deployments of MEC in 5G. Of course, 3GPP is the home for the 5G, so we are in alignment with the SAE6 as a sub-working group defining edge app architecture for the standard. Sorry, this is very technical, but actually that's the point. The devil is in the details, right? So and also we want to collaborate with other stakeholders, like well, this is not a standard body. GSMA is a trade association, an industrial association with many stakeholders, but they are also in common members following standard bodies, and they are putting in place some requirements of MEC Federation, for example, and we are collaborating with them. We are also collaborating with other standard groups, well, many industrial verticals, like 5G Automotive Association, when I'm also Intel delegate there. And we need and we like to collaborate as well with open source projects, like, for example, like Acraino. These are just practical examples. I'm not telling it just a nice story that we are solving the problem. No, actually, this is an open problem for everybody, including ourselves, and practically means as well how to drive standardization work and actually publish specifications that are aligned with other groups, considering as well that each and every group have their own autonomy. So we need tools for the collaboration. So the actual question is how to collaborate. Which are the tools for us to collaborate in practice? And sorry, my microphone now is with the low battery. I have to change. But really, you can see in the slide some examples of which are tools like memorandum of understanding, letter of intent, and license statements, cooperation agreement. My question is a bit provocative to everybody. Is this sufficient in terms of tools to enhance a real and effective cooperation? This is just an open question. I believe we also need to listen for the other opinions. Thanks. Now I'm changing the mic.
Thank you. Grazie mille. That leads me to maybe direct a question directly to Lars. We know that IPv6 was designed not initially for the IoT, it was designed to overcome the IPv4 limitation of address space. But by designing IPv6, we have a perfect protocol to address the scalability of the Internet of Things. We can address billions of billions of billions of billions of IoT devices with a unique public IP addresses. So IPv6 is playing a very important role. It's now there is a convergence with 3GPP. There are quite a number of evolutions. So how do you see from your perspective, what could be done to enhance this convergence? And how could the research community support this convergence to make 6G or XG fully IPv6 compliant, to make the convergence between the IP layer, layer 3, and the other layers to converge and to work together in a harmonious manner? Lars.
So there's a lot of questions in what you just said. So, I mean, in terms of pure connectivity, right, V6, you're right, pretty much gives you what you need, right, which is unique identifiable objects in the order of billions and billions and billions, right? So in terms of IP addressing and routing, you can have all your devices connected to the internet. You will need to sort of think about, I mean, since we're on a panel and I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate, right? I don't get the MEC part, or the M part of MEC, right? I don't understand what's special about multi-access, right? The whole internet is multi-access. I don't understand why it's now different for IoT. There's a lot of talk about, you know, quality of service, and that's been undeployed on the internet for decades, and there are reasons for that. I don't see that changing here either. Very briefly, quality of service is always sort of the measure of choice if you have a mindset that you need to administer scarcity for a long time, right? You put resources onto administering lack of resources. You could put the same resources or the same money towards building more resources, right? And this is what the internet typically does. So as the internet gets bigger and faster, applications that 10 years ago were claimed to need QoS, now don't need it anymore. And this will continue to happen, right? So I'm very skeptical when I saw some slides that had QoS on it. I'm skeptical that we need it in the long run. I'm pretty sure that by the time these things get deployed, the examples we have seen here or elsewhere, right, will probably run on the general internet without specific quality of service. And that means that you don't necessarily need this tight, getting back to the question, you don't necessarily need this tight control between the lower layers and the application. Yeah. This has always been sort of the difficult thing to do if you have a layered architecture, right? You're abstracting away details, and by abstracting away details, you're giving up fine-grained control over the lower layers. And that's the name of the game.
Maybe that leads to two complementary questions. Very briefly, I see the questions from Rolf. What is the added value of MEC or mobile edge or multi-access edge computing and edge? But typically when you have the development of more and more artificial intelligence, where you want to minimize the data sharing or data minimization in line, for instance, with the GDPR, where you should try to process data at the edge rather at the core. How do you see this interaction? Because you're right, in terms of layer 3, we have all what we need with IPv6 and with complementary standards like 6T, 6LoWPAN, and so on. Now, how do you see the integration and the convergence between the network layer and the application layer, for instance, where you would have more data processing? How do you see this convergence, and how can it be supported by convergence and collaboration among different SDOs in this context?
Just asking me?
You, or perhaps also Jochen from IBM, maybe you can have also a perspective on this topic, where IBM has been very active in this domain too.
Not sure, Lars first, and then
I can quickly go first. So from the internet, right? The internet's a network, and you have compute deployed at various places in the network. And with edge, right? This goes back to 15 years when we talked to operators, right? That if you need to be very close to the edge of the network, you control the access points and the base stations. You could put compute there. no problem, right? It's always been possible. That the hard part is nobody really figured out is how do you manage that? How do you manage a computation system that has multiple points in a distributed network where you have latencies that are non-negligible? We worked it out for the cloud, right? We can do things on the end user device or the edge device, the browser or where have you, and we can do things on the cloud. And we figured out, with 2 points when we know what functionality should go where, right? Which is why most machine learning happens in the cloud, for example. If you're now talking about this edge architecture, you're adding at least a third place where computation could happen, potentially more, right? I heard stuff with near edge and far edge and so on. And that is just a hard management problem. It gives you a lot of flexibility, but I don't know if we actually know how we need to structure computation or distributed systems so it actually takes advantage of this, right? So just because we can put it there, it's not clear that it's actually going to benefit. And again, being a little bit controversial, what I see happening on the telco side, there was a lot of hype about, edge computing provided by telcos. All that I see now is telcos partnering with hyperscalers to run that for them, and basically they get a revenue cut. So the telcos, as far as I can see, are pulling out of the edge space and are basically letting the hyperscalers run the show because they know what they think they know what they're doing.
Okay, thank you. That's stimulating the debate for sure. And thank you very much. We are here for that, to exchange ideas and to think out of the box.
Yeah, I should say this is not, I'm not speaking for the Ietf when I make these purposefully controversial statements, but I'm trying to sort of have it in the panel.
Fully agreed. That's fine, and that's very welcome. Let's brainstorm and think out of the box. Mentioning the interaction, so you say, there is also an evolution from the telco operators. Let's take the perspective of 3GPP, where we have a huge development in terms of network slicing and virtualization of the networks. How do you see the impact for edge computing from your side? Perhaps Dario or Alice, who would like to answer on this perspective from the telecom operator perspective, or how do you see this impact, this convergence? We are clearly evolving with different approach, different technologies, different standardization tracks or cultures, which are more evolving towards more and more interaction with each other. So how do you see the role of, for instance, IPv6 in network slicing, in future networks for edge computing? Dario or Alice, would you have any suggestion or comment on this topic? Or Marco?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sebastian. Maybe I can just say a couple of words and then I will leave the floor to Alice and Mark and the others.
We don't hear you well, Dario. Perhaps the mic is not well connected.
Okay. Now it's better?
It's better. It's slow, but it's better.
Okay, sorry for that. I had to change in real-time microphone. So just a couple of words. Maybe I will leave the floor to Alice, Marco, and the others. So yeah, correct question. It's important for us at CMEC to be aligned with 3GPP when it comes to 5G. So because maybe Alice can further elaborate, but she presented already the scope of ETSIMEC. MEC is an acronym standing for multi-access edge computing. So not only limited to mobile cellular networks, but also other accesses like Wi-Fi, fixed access. So it's really cloud computing at the edge. But of course, for us, 5G is the mainstream. So talking with the operators is a must, as early adopters of edge computing infrastructure. And of course, we are doing this now. I can mention, maybe I can also share in the chat window, a white paper written by authors from both ETSIMEC and 3GPP officials 1 year ago about the desire to be aligned on this architectural standard. Between ETSIMEC and 3GPP, we talk about a synergized architecture, because we want to transfer this message that actually there are not competing standards, but we don't want to duplicate the work. We want to allow also synergy between different standards, and also, most importantly, convergence of products to not duplicate as well the cost for operators. or confuse the market. So our commitment is, of course, to align with the 3GPP and continue this past work 1 year ago, the white paper, and now also in SA6, for example, is in scope of release 18, the alignment as well with the ECMAC architecture. And this is a reality now. And also from ECMAC side, Alice can tell, and she also led some work on Mac in 5G, is a great leader and contributor. She is the vice chairman of ECMAC and can tell more on that alignment with 5G, but not only with 5G, of course.
Thank you, Dario. I think we are losing you for the audio, unfortunately, but thank you. I think we capture most of your message. That's technical issues. From this perspective regarding convergence among SDOs, perhaps François, from your experience with GTC, how do you see the possibility not only to support horizontal cooperation among SDOs to converge, to better understand the different perspective, because of course everyone will see the perspective from its own layer or from its own specific point of view, but how would you foresee the possibility, for instance, for the research community to support this convergence, this dialogue among different SDOs, to support interoperability, to avoid having, I would say, global silos, which is already better than local silos or vertical silos, but having something which enables to build bridges among the different SDO communities. What would be your suggestion? Where could the research contribute to this evolution, to this convergence? François.
Yes, it's a bit, if I look at the participants we have, at least from my perspective in SC41, we have a lot of people from industry. We have cooperation with a lot of industrial fora, like for instance, we have a process called e-liaison, and AIOTI is an e-liaison, which means that expert can participate and also comments. And there's a lot of other organizations like the Industrial Internet Consortium. So contrary to what's said, there's a lot of openness in the process. And we have members that are from the academic community that do research, and the result of the research can find its way through the process to the national bodies. So there is some input coming from this side. We have to be a bit careful because you don't standardize things that are not used normally. For some time, it may be good to think. Like we talk a lot at this workshop about edge computing. Now, edge computing, I know there's still a lot of work, but it's one aspect of distributed computing. There's other type of distributed computing probably that are less in use and probably the subject of more research, like swarm computing. The intelligence can move further to the edge, the extreme edge, miscomputing. And you have example already in the real life. There's a lot of emphasis on edge computing because you want to lower latency and bring more the application closer, the processing closer to the source of the data, but it's only one aspect. And I was mentioning resiliency is another aspect that we don't talk a lot. Very important in many type of application, including utilities, smart cities, and all that. And you have to think, and now you're thinking in terms of computing, distributed computing architecture, thus not only cloud and edge, and the needs are very different. So this is where I think more research is required, industrial research or academic research that can give some inputs, and also probably will be able, and maybe standards, at least technical report or studies can be made in this area before you can bring standardization in. Trustworthiness is another area. I mean, we talk about security, resiliency, but there's other aspect there, and it's not very easy to specify. It's what you call a non-functional attribute for a system, and even less to implement. So there's room in there because when we talk about IoT, we're talking complex in some case complex, some are simpler in the home, distributed computing, network intensive, and network is not only the internet. You can have IoT system without the internet because of security reason and using totally different protocol. The colleagues from TC65 are always talking to me about that, about all their protocol that they have designed to work in industrial environment. So it's a very large world. I don't know if I answered your question or at least raised some questions, some interesting point for a debate.
Thank you very much. Maybe
can I add something to François?
And then myself too. Thank you.
Yes, please.
So just want to mention that it happened in SC41 because we have a item called Semantic Interoperability where you are manipulating ontologies, okay? It's a very specialized item, and lots of people from AITI, but also elsewhere, working on ontologies came in, okay? And without their support, nothing would have happened, okay? And there are a few items. So François mentioned use cases in general, okay, concepts, okay, and also technical reports where you have, and this is where everything starts. So you have here the ground, the playground where academics can play a role.
Mm. Okay. Maybe to follow on what you say before giving the floor also to Marco, another challenge we see in the standardization domain is the risk to have regional fragmentation. We have a good example, for instance, in Europe, there was a very strong development around NGSI, which is well adopted in Europe, but not really adopted in the US or in other regions of the world, where, for instance, the MQTT will be prevalent. What can do the research community to prevent this kind of fragmentation or to support a more global approach towards standardization? Maybe Antonio and then Marco, if you want to complement on this.
So the good thing is that the research community is international, and we just must push them that actually they pay attention to standardization, in particular when it comes to ICT, because we need their view and their vision definitely from the start. So we need to take advantage of that. Okay. Hope it answers your question.
Thank you very much. Marco, you wanted to intervene.
Yeah, I have several points, but obviously everybody has to speak. So I want to focus on 2 points, which is actually related also to your question on regional fragmentation. The first one is that Dario asked, there are sufficient tools. Well, there are other tools, but we do not use them well. For example, different organizations are pushing about shared roadmaps, but then we don't share really these roadmaps. And if you organize well these roadmaps towards a common vision, that comes, for example, from the users, that can be another direction for where we can from to pick up the good standards. I mean, Lars also raised a good point, which he said is internally to Ietf, but most internally to Ietf, but it's internally to many organizations, because can we enter in the space of solution? Also, ITU doesn't do solution, but it's true that in many cases, people and European Commission ask in the past years, could we have a specific reference stack for IoT where we can take up solution at different solution technology and protocols at different levels? So, well, we need to have an open environment. However, obviously, this is an interesting question and we need to work towards that. I do not have an answer about that, but I think from the user perspective, they may want to be able to pick up the good standards. And to be able to pick the good standard, I think we need to harmonize them, because there are different perspectives how they are created, and not necessarily we are able to put them together in an harmonized way. So these are meta efforts that can be done independent of EC in general, KPIs, key performance indicators. For example, we look at smart cities, what they use as KPIs, and how from that we can move on to technology specification to build a smart city which are under those KPI, which are under those user needs. I want to mention these ITU, ISO, IEC smart cities. I don't want to make advertisement to it, but I'm part of it. And there, for example, now it has been asked, we did a common vision for smart city. So a common vision for a smart city has to come not only from a standardization point of view, but from the user point of view. And I think this other perspective, maybe if we were work more with the shared tools, we may push this convergence. Obviously, fragmentation regional level, if you work internationally, as Antonio said in research, but we can also work internationally with SDOs. A number of these SDOs really play a role internationally. The certainly regional issues should be somehow mitigated in the context of international specifications. So I would say that there is a general approach on standardization. The problem is not only in EC, and I agree with Francois. EC is just a technology. You mentioned another one. Probably roadmaps and type of approach only on technology pure starting point is not the good one. We should have more holistic vision, the holistic vision on maybe the requirements from the users, and then maybe technology can put together depending on those needs, but not necessarily having approach technology per technology. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marco. This leads me also to another question. We see that more and more we need to address certain above societal requirements in the design of the technology. I'm thinking to two particular requirements, and I'd like to hear the views of the panelists on this. One is, of course, the SDG, so climate neutrality. There is a commitment from the industry, and there is a demand from the society and from public authorities to reduce the environmental footprint, to have, I would say, climate neutral technologies, and that requires to involve other expertise than the usual one we have in standardization for ICT standardization. So maybe a question on this aspect. And another societal requirement which is emerging and impacting standardization, which is data protection by design or privacy, cybersecurity. So how you see the role again of the research community to support this evolution, this support to have a more holistic approach in standardization to ensure that the technology we are standardizing today will be aligned with the expectations of the market, of the society, of the different stakeholders. Any comment on this aspect, on these two dimensions? So climate neutrality or SDGs or Green Deal for Europe, and data protection by design, privacy by design from the, I would say, the individual user rights and citizens protection rights perspective. Any comment on this aspect, which are interacting with other expertise? So legal, regulatory.
If I may jump in, yeah. Thank you very much for this, because I fully agree, and we are already discussing this in the context of Industry 4.0 as well, of digitizing industry. Circular economy, for instance, is very much looking at the same technologies as we have them for digitization of industry, right? You want to know the material that is in a product, you want to know how it is combined, you want to know whether it is toxic or not, and you want to know how to unbuild the respective product again later on. So there is a high potential here for the standards work to include this kind of information. I was mentioning the asset administration shell before. There are already projects to create submodels of this that address the material part and this part. Of course, we need different standards for design in general, right? New standards here, all of this, a huge area and a huge challenge that needs to be addressed fast as well, right? It's an important aspect of climate neutrality to reduce waste, and circular economy is clearly for this. If I may add, again here, research standardizing user perspectives. Let me bring in again the experience we have also in IBM from open source. In open source communities, we see a very lively joint work of researchers, developers from companies, all kinds of people come together here. They make use of standards, they develop code, they gain experience, they provide a fast feedback if there are standardization gaps. This is an area that is moving vividly, and we have leveraged it for IBM. And you mentioned before Edge and Cloud, how they come together. There are Linux Foundation projects, Open Horizon and Edge in Linux Foundation, where also this is addressed, right? and leveraging open source communities, bringing technologies in the implementation level in source code development, and here create communities where researchers, and I know researchers, young people at universities, they are very keen on taking this up, right? It's fantastic for them. They can easily experiment with technologies. They can even contribute. This is something where I see that is already going on very fast and with high energy, and how to make use of this for us standardizers as well, and bring information back into standardization and leverage these dynamics for standardization is something we need to look on further, I believe.
Thank you very much. I see that time is fleeing and we could continue the discussion for a long time. What I'd like to do is, before inviting Antonio Kung and Rolf to make a wrap up and a conclusion, I'd like to invite each one of you to share one key challenge you foresee in terms of research and innovation for IoT and edge computing, in particular with the perspective of standardization. Maybe, I don't know if we can invite all of you, one after the others, to share one very short vision. What is one of the key priority from your perspective, from a research perspective, and where the research community could support and contribute? Who would like to start?
Antonio, I'm going to start because I need to go, so sorry for that. Okay, and just want to mention that one of the things, the world of standards is going to change with what we call smart standards that you can move around, transferable, things like that, okay? And one of the ideas, and ISO is working on those smart standards, is that they would be based on use cases are smart standards, because use cases are living stuff. They change all the time. If you put them as a PDF document, they are old-fashioned right away, okay? And this is one way, because the landscape of standards might be changing with that in mind, that actually a standard is not a document, it's a web document. And actually it's a web document that is changing dynamically. Okay? And one of my vision, my recommendation is maybe to work on that.
Mm-hmm. So new models of standardization, where instead of freezing a specification, we have something which is more dynamic, which can evolve, which can adapt with the fluidity of the technology evolution.
Exactly.
Very interesting.
If I may?
Who would like to?
If I may?
Sure, of course.
Yes, I will be in line with my what I said before. I think there's probably room to look at the different how to implement a resilient IoT system. What kind of distributed computing architecture? How should the functionality be allocated to the different layers? What kind of protocol should be used? I mean, it's not only 5G. I mean, when I talk about swarm computing, you need to have a mesh protocol. When you move at the layer of things communicate between themselves, you probably will have an IoT system, the usage of many protocols, depending again at which architectural layer you're, between which architecture layer you're communicating. So I don't think this is very easy or evident. Thank you.
Thank you very much, François. Who would like to take the token? Dario.
Sebastian, can you hear me now?
Very low. I don't know. The volume seems to be very low. But we can distinguish what you say.
Okay, good, better. This is the third microphone changing. No, just very quickly. I believe, let me say something disruptive. As a chairman of a standard body, let me tell, the standard cannot solve totally this problem. I'm not against my own business, but really, to be honest, the standard should be, in my opinion, and it's actually what should be for every standard body, industry-driven, market-driven. So we are not to standardize everything. We don't have to impose every over-engineering of many things, and that will actually close the market. No, we have to open the market and lean on industry preference and requirement to standardize something. And for me, the standard is a tool for interoperability whenever it is needed by different stakeholders to play with each other, and not to impose or let's say define as a postulate a messaging or something in the standard. So say that to bridge also with the research needs and long term, there should be a strategy, of course.
course. And this should be fed by stakeholders that will actually put in practice into the products. Otherwise, it's pure research that we put on paper in standards that are never, ever used.
Yeah.
So sorry, I don't want to play the role of the bad guy, but I want to be honest with everybody. The standard cannot solve in principle. We should not standardize everything. I'm not telling because I'm lazy, but because really we have to carefully manage what is only needed to be standardized, and that is because the industry is requesting to do so.
So
can I answer on these comments?
To be driven by needs, effective needs, and effective implementation. Yes, Marco, you wanted to say?
Yeah, actually, I would like to add a little flavor, a different flavor to what Dario is saying, because yet it's true we have not to standardize everything. However, we see today predominance of some market leaders. When you look at data economy, we know where is the money and where is not the money. Who produce the data actually has not only those who have the money. So in the data governance, for example, it's very clear that we needed to have good guidelines to produce standards which are sustainable for the whole market and for the whole community from a social employment and in general people point of view. And this means that the standardization with the complexity of this environment today of technology and networks, with a lot of ecosystem, the plurality of ecosystem and actors, policy, regulation, which differ across the world and so on, we did some level of convergence where maybe we have some meta-regulation principle on data, for example, that can be accepted across the world. At least we should aim towards that via international organization where the situation is not easy at all. We should aim towards meta policies, and based on that, maybe we should give guidelines to standards to work against those guidelines and not produce maybe standard, although Dario, they may be not everything, but then the few one they may produce maybe do not answer some critical needs from the community point of view, from the multiplicity of actors in the point of view, but maybe they reflect the interests of those who have the power to produce standards, which are not all the community today. So this is a little social point of view, but I would say we have to work toward that. So in my view, combining research with standard policy regulation aspect is important. And I agree what was said before on the chat, the interplay of research and standards. The open source is a big issue. I think ITU has not clear view how to deal with open sources. Maybe other organizations like Ietf are more clear on that, but certainly between formal standard and open source, we needed to move forward. Thank you.
So if I summarize what you mentioned, there is really a need to support convergence and to have more interplay both between the research and the standardization activities, but also with the, I would say, multi-stakeholder perspective or requirements.
Anyway, let me say that I'm not disagreeing with Marco. I think I interpret this as a complementary point of view between standards and regulation, which I agree totally. Thanks.
So I will just repeat what you just said because perhaps not everybody heard it. So Dario was saying that he does not disagree with Marco, and there is a complementarity. And I think there is, again, a very good illustration that from different perspectives, different SDOs, there is an interest to converge and there is a need to converge and to ensure that we don't end up with fragmented technologies if you want really the IoT and the edge to work together. Any other closing remark, maybe Jochen, if you want to say a few words, a key challenge you foresee from your perspective before I give the floor to Rolf, also to give his perspective as European Commission in charge of leading the future research program. So Jochen.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the topic convergence of standards, body standards, activities. I'm not sure, actually. I fully agree that convergence, I think solid understanding of what is going on and avoiding unnecessary duplication is what we need. Convergence goes a bit too far. That means we can put everything into one and just have one standard, a big one or whatever that solves the problem. We need to be careful with the understanding how it is perceived, I would say. But definitely have regular, and the Commission is great in also facilitating this dialogue, right? And have exchange so that people know this is going on here, this is going on here, this is going on here. And we see then also convergence in terms of standards coming from the mobile standardization world, from ETSI, from 3GPP, standards coming from the IEC or JTC1 world. And here we need to bring also worlds together and facilitate a bit, if you like, convergence or interoperability between these two worlds. That's something that's still a challenge, right? We do have the different sectors, and where they have sector-specific standards that increasingly try to solve the same issues, we need to make sure that they come together and either interoperate or maybe even converge at some point in time. Absolutely, yeah.
Facilitating perhaps cross-organization collaboration. We had an example very recently at ITU Group 11 with a standard which was supported by European Research Project, but with communities, experts from IEEE, HC and ITU working together informally to agree on a common standard to foster testbed federation interoperability. So really trying to bring the expertise from different SDOs to work together in a creative manner to support convergence and complementarity. So what you mentioned, convergence is maybe too far, but complementarity would be certainly something which seems to be consensual or common views in this panel. So thank you very much. Allow me now to give the floor to Rolf, perhaps to share your vision as head or responsible for the upcoming research call for the European Commission on IoT Edge Cloud. How do you see these different elements which have been highlighted by our panels? What is your vision? How would you, what are your main takeaway from this discussion, Rolf?
Thanks, Sebastian. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I appreciated the discussion today. I will not share my vision now at the end of the session, but certainly I try to share with you my takeaways or what I picked up as an important element. First of all, I think the workshop was very well organized in terms of showing the broad scope of IoT today. As you know, in the past, we know that several standardization organizations tackle the issues of interoperability and fragmentation from different angles, which is worthwhile. I would consider this sort of events, exchanging information, synchronizing as very relevant. We've seen that, yes, IoT has seen a push and a momentum, particularly from digitizing you with industry strategy, from Industry 4.0 and other initiatives, which give them a kick, which was a move forward. However, we have seen an evolution from IoT towards the data economy. Actually, the data models, data business models become more prevalent, that cloud providers have entered the scene. And the question is also what we try to tackle today. Could we reverse the trend? Is there a new paradigm shift towards the edge, for instance? I think I acknowledge you cannot be answered, in a one-day workshop, and we are still in the beginning of a journey, but that is a bit of a prevailing question. Yes, obviously, I took note that there is a need for a broad range of standardization-related activities. You've seen the presentation, which I appreciated from GDC1 on the different working groups. There's a need for cooperation from GDC1 and IC, as I mentioned there, and we acknowledge the liaison with European initiatives. But Edge indeed brings another dimension, as was said today from Francois, related to not only distributed networking, eventually mesh networks from Ietf on Bluetooth or wireless LAN or whatever, but also the notion of distributed computing, which brings us another dimension, which is not just continuing designing the devices or the programming in the same way as we do today, and that is a bit of an open challenge. We see definitely there needs to be a strong anchor and a strong foundation in the industry. I think we need industrial sector. Jochen mentioned now we have to see not about convergence, but how to benefit and leverage progress in some sectors and move it to others. I think particularly today, if you talk about Green Deal, we will not be able to reach the targets of the Green Deal with only one sector. We need leverage different sectors. We need to cost-cutting issues. And we also have seen first discussions and a lot of evidence that there's a need to bring together the momentum of open source and standardization architectures. There's learning on both sides. I think fully agree. We have taken note of that, and we see how we implement that in the first projects. If you look at the work program, it's clearly mentioned and spelled out. We have to look at the first projects once they'll be selected, whether we can build on that momentum, whether we can demonstrate something on that level. We've seen that, yes, that 5G is embracing IoT, particularly also at the edge. So far, little evidence at the moment where we're going, what are the business models, what are the drivers, is it urgent, or is it just one of the different business streams of telcos? I think there were some mixed feelings today, and we have to keep an eye on that also, with the liaison of the Alliance IoT and the SNS partnership. I think I also have taken note from Ietf, that beyond standardization, we always have to continuously look at what are the key building blocks in the sectors. And we are aiming at, in the work program 2023-24, exactly on these building blocks and validation of building blocks and standards and related sectors, eventually also cost sectors. This is in our head. I think we've taken note of that, and we try to pursue that path. Finally, it goes without saying that we don't have much time, as always. Industry is moving fast. Industry is looking for solutions today, and there will be a push for extending the cloud to business model towards the edge. So eventually, we're looking for new models for agile standardization or pre-normative standardized models or specifications. But I think the most important, my message today is we have to be in sync with the different activities, not repeating things, duplicating things, or try to be in sync or try to see which working group of a standardization organization has put an attention on some aspects which we can use in our pilot, on our project, in our work. So that it's not only one, but we have to look across different SDOs, include the open source community, and try to focus our work on specific things like we did in the past. We have some homework to do, which means, the ICT rolling plan, standardization rolling plan is as broad as the GTC1 activities. Again, for us as a unit or for particular projects to find their ways, we have to focus and we have to guide them. So we have to update this on a regular basis. And we have to put the right slots and the hooks that companies, industrial associations like IIX or IoTi can have a hook, can make a contribution, and allowing projects to collaborate and benefit from that plan to make a plan a reality. So I think we rely on your expertise, on your cooperation and your support. Thank you all for the discussion today, and thank you for the workshop. And I think it was just the starting point to see where we are. And I pass the floor back to Sebastian, because we have another day tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rolf. I think it was a very nice wrap up. Thank you to all of you for your contribution. It was very enlightening, inspiring. I hope it will be an opportunity to trigger new collaboration, new complementarities among SDOs, among the research community and the standardization process, and exploring also new bridges among regions, because again, it's important that we have a good collaboration at the European level, but we avoid also regional fragmentation in the standardization. And that also probably requires to imagine or explore new collaboration axes across regions too. As Rolf mentioned, we have 2 other sessions tomorrow, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. You have the program. We will focus on specific verticals, and you will have the possibility then to access the presentations and the recording of the session on the NG-IoT website. So again, a great appreciation to your contribution, very high quality contributions, highly appreciated. Thank you all for your participation, and I wish you an excellent afternoon, morning, or evening, depending on where you stay. A great pleasure and a great appreciation. Thank you very much.